Welcome to Sheffield Manor Lodge. My name is Katie and I will be your tour guide for today. The site is run by Green Estate, a social enterprise committed to making a positive difference to local people and the environment through landscape and heritage. The turret house has been kept in such good condition as it was occupied continuously. It was converted into a farmhouse, and later, when it had a custodian, the smaller buildings at the side were removed. In the turret house, we head through the front door and up a spiral staircase. This painting, done by Kenneth Steele, was his representation of how Sheffield Castle might have looked. On the painting, you can see Dixon Lane and Lady Bridge. The moat is made up of the rivers Sheaf and Don. This was under the old Sheffield Market, which has now been demolished. There's currently an excavation on the site by University of Sheffield to find out what's left of the castle. The first thing that you see here when you walk into the banquet room is the fireplace, which has above it the coat of arms of the Earl of Shrewsbury. On this, you can see some Talbot dogs named after his family. They were dogs bred for hunting deer and were white with great tongues hanging out of their mouths. They no longer exist as a breed. Above, you can see the magnificent ceiling, and as a status symbol, as to let people know who owned the property, the three coats of arms of George Talbot are incorporated onto the ceiling plaster. You can see the influence of Mary Queen of Scots here, as we see the thistle for Scotland, and also a briar rose with a clenched lady's hand. This is the symbol of Catherine de' Medici, who was the mother-in-law to Mary, Queen of Scots, when she was married to King Francis II of France, which meant that Mary was also Queen of France for some time. Whilst Mary was staying as a prisoner here at Sheffield, this would have been an example of some of the food that she could have eaten. Remember that although she was a prisoner, she had to be kept in the manner of a queen. Here we can see wild boar. Remember that Sheffield Manor Lodge was in the middle of the biggest deer park in England. It was 2,500 acres and the perimeter was 9 miles round. In the deer park was mainly fallow deer, which would have been hunted with a net. If you wanted to really go hunting deer, you would have had to go on a chase, possibly up towards the Riverland Valley. We also have a rib of beef, duck, goose, partridge and pheasant. The pie would have 4 and 20 blackbirds. The birds would be smoked until they were unconscious and a cooked pie crust put on top of them. When the pie was opened, the birds began to sing and the oxygen would get in, wake the birds up, and they would fly out. This would be a spectacle for visiting guests. There is also fruit, and sometimes these would have been made from sugar or marzipan as an ornamental feature. This room has been decorated to show how Mary would have lived during her imprisonment. As she would have been kept in the manner of a queen, she would have been allowed a certain amount of freedom, but this would have been restricted slightly. She was nearly 6 foot tall, which is very tall for a woman of her time. She towered above most people, except George Talbot, the 6th Earl of Shrewsbury, who was roughly the same height as her. And she was very alluring, as she was a queen and unmarried. When her husband, the King of France, died early, she had not produced an heir, so she went back to Scotland to reclaim her throne. She ruled very successfully by herself, but then she married Lord Darnley. This was not successful, and the house he was staying in was blown up, and he was found dead on the lawn, having been strangled. Lord Bothwell was put on trial for the murder, but was found not guilty. 3 months later, Mary married Lord Bothwell, but this too was disastrous. He was captured and left to die in prison in Denmark. She then fled to England, hoping for support from Elizabeth I, her cousin, but was imprisoned. First in Sheffield Castle, then at Sheffield Manor Lodge for 14 years. Thank you for listening. I hope you've learnt something new and we look forward to seeing you soon.